Hello, I'm Lillian Miazga, and today I will be discussing a topic that we've explored a lot in class, although it wasn't necessarily listed in the questions that we could explore. But this question is going to be, does our knowledge rely and derive from our experience and senses? A few topics related to this question will also be explored, and to do so, I'm going to be talking about two philosophers that we talked about in class, which are Hume and Descartes. Hume's viewpoint is going to be the one that is most explored here because that's the one that I most agree with, but we also look at Descartes as a rebuttal. So when Hume examines this question, he believes that yes, our knowledge does derive from our experience and senses. This basically means that everything that we sense in the world provides us with all of the information and the knowledge that we need. And he separates this into two forms. He looks at impressions, which is basically everything that we sense in the world around us that comes through our senses and the direct observations that we make. And then he also looks at ideas, which are the things that we can use and the concepts that we can form based on the impressions that we just prior experienced. This is similar to another scientific viewpoint, which is rooted in psychology and looks closely at how the brain works and processes this information and then forms our perception. And it's going to be called bottom-up and top-down processing. Bottom-up processing would be most similar to what Hume describes as impressions, which are taking in the world around you through all the senses, and then this sensation that is coming in through the bodily systems then travels down to the parts of our brain that further processes the information and eventually helps create the perception of the world around us and our environment that we are in. To do this, the brain is also going to use the other half of the processing, which is top-down processing, and this is going to be similar to Hume's ideas. Top-down processing is kind of your brain using all of the past knowledge and experience and concepts and the way we've learned, and it kind of fills in the blanks to also combine with the sensory experience that we have, and this will form our perception of the world around us and the environment and the current situation that we are in. So I think that because Hume explores these two ideas and that they're closely aligned with psychological ideas as well, that there may be some truth into what Hume is saying. So this concept of Hume's that we are exploring through the senses is known as empiricism, and this is the idea I basically mentioned, which is reality is based on the sensory experience and the perception of the world. And though I do agree mostly with this, I feel that in order to have a complete understanding, we need to also explore the differing viewpoints, and there's a few reasons for this. And the one philosopher that we're going to use to explore these differing viewpoints is René Descartes, and he feels that our knowledge does not have to derive directly from our senses and experiences. He takes a more rationalist approach, which kind of believes that there is some kind of outside knowledge or force or energy that contributes to our understanding, and this may be something such as the human mind. Just that there's some kind of outside logic rather than just our senses that contributes to this. And I do think that there could be some truth in this for a few different reasons. The first reason is also looking again from a more scientific standpoint, is that we can look at consciousness and how the brain works in respect to this. We may know a lot about how the brain works, but there's always going to be an aspect that we don't necessarily understand, which is conscious thought. We can only get so far in the nitty-gritty details of like how our neurons work and how it causes certain brain areas to activate, but we're always going to reach a stopping point. Because take, for example, consciously thinking to move your arm. I may have the thought that I want to move my arm and I have the desire to, and then I can instantaneously move my arm. I can do it quickly, slowly, in any direction I want, multiple times, but it all roots down to the fact that I had that original thought of moving my arm. So that being said, one may wonder, how does that non-material thought kind of transform into some kind of material, physical electricity that causes my neurons to fire and then my muscles to move? basically there's a bridge that has to be crossed between a non-material thought and then this material action. It's not something that Descartes necessarily references or mentions or even makes a point of, because I think he looks more kind of on a understanding knowledge kind of level rather than the actual actions that we partake in the world. But I think that because my original question looks at senses and perception, that this is also something that is important to take account. It can offer a unique viewpoint. And then the other reason to explore is that if Hume were completely correct in his viewpoint that all of our knowledge is based on our senses, he fails to take in different circumstances, such as another human being blind, or being deaf, or even animals that have better sensory abilities than humans, or even, if you want to go on a more human level, humans that have more knowledge on certain topics or specialize in certain areas that other humans may not. For example, someone who's blind may have a completely different reality than I do, but just because they can't see what I can, does that mean it doesn't necessarily exist in the world? No. Same goes for animals that can have a larger spectrum and see more colors than I can, or hear different frequencies and hear different sounds, or even if you want to take into account like someone next to me that may know Morse code and I don't know Morse code, does that mean that Morse code doesn't exist just because I don't understand it? No, it doesn't. And I feel like the same idea can be applied to all of these circumstances. Now, that's kind of where the line gets blurry, is because is Hume's question is his viewpoint focusing more on the entire conglomerate of information in our world, everything that exists or does exist to an organism that is able to perceive it? Or is he kind of more focused on a personal, simpler human level, such as that being his own? Because he is his own perceiving being, so that's really all he can focus on. But yes, that is where the line, I think, kind of gets a little bit blurry. And it's also kind of why I tend to agree more with Hume, surprisingly, on the empiricist side, is because at the end of the day, and I think even Descartes mentions the term of like thinking thing, since I am the thinking being inside of my own head, if my perception of the world is based on the senses that I personally use and the ones that have gotten me this far, that's simply all I really can use and deal with, and that's the only way that I can view the world. Is it inherently selfish? It's kind of up for debate, but at the end of the day, like, if my senses were to be advanced or my knowledge were to be expanded, then of course I would have to consider the previous information that may not have been presented to me or understood by me. But until then, I can only really experience what I'm given through my senses, as that is what eventually comes back up into my own brain and my own human thoughts. So it doesn't mean that the other things don't necessarily exist in the world, but since I'm unable to even consciously comprehend them or consider them, does their reality even really need to matter to me? Anyways, but yeah, because our respective existences in this world are not going to be changed whether I believe that it's real or not. So that being said, that's the end of my video, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I do thank you for a great semester. I learned a lot, and I was very pleased with the class. I thank you again.